Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, October 23rd, 2020, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright guys, well, we're going to continue with the second part of my series looking into the accounts of the quote-unquote giants, or large hominids as I like to call them, international, and in this video we are going to focus on Britain. And if anybody knows anything about the history of Britain, well, giants figure heavily into that, since the whole legend of the founding of Britain is based on this whole thing. Although it's kind of hard to say you found something, you found something where there was already people living here, but the fact that they're giants is all okay because of everything to do with it. But if you didn't know the story, the Giants of Albion, I've covered a little bit of it on this channel before, but let's read about Gog Magog, and this comes from the legends in Britain. Gog Magog was a legendary giant in Welsh and later English mythology. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth's History Regum Britanniae, the history of the kings of Britain, 12th century, he was a giant inhabitant of Albion, thrown off a cliff during a wrestling match with Corineus, a companion of Brutus of Troy. Gog Magog was the last one of the giants found by Brutus and his men inhabiting the land of Albion. The effigies of Gog Magog and Corineus, used in English pageantry and later instituted as guardian statues at Guildhall in London, eventually earned the familiar names Gog and Magog. So, in any case, if you want to hear about the whole convoluted story about the founding of Britain and about the giants and everything, and it's, British history of the giants figures heavily into the genocide of the giants, the Jack and the Beanstalk, etc. I've gone over this on this channel, and again, these giants, when, you really want to examine their lives and everything, appear to be people who are more advanced in several different ways. And of course, they always find them with these perfect teeth, which is a indication that they weren't eating any red meat. So this whole cannibal story is just a bunch of nonsense, nothing but demonization of the enemy, whether it's the Bible or in all these stories or all the stories around the world. You got to get it through your head, folks. The giants that came sometime in various, different epochs in human history, that the giants in whatever given area they were had to go. In some cases, in the Americas, we heard about them integrating into the native peoples of the Americas as well. So it depended upon the time period when there could have been survivors. There were hybrids, of a very, very complicated story of the ages of the giants. And, these are the things that we discuss on this channel here. But, yeah, here's a picture of Queen Elizabeth here at some time in the past looking at one of these giant skeletons. I mean, if you find these giant skeletons, nobody was talking about gigantism or acromegaly back then or whatever, but these are some of the excuses given to a whole race of people suffering from acromegaly or, whatever other ailments might come with unusual size. Nowadays, that's what they attribute to these people, but their bones, everything were obviously bigger, where the ligaments on their bodies connected to the bones show, more muscle mass. And if the chiefs of the Fiji Islands or the Watusi people are any indication of what these giants may have been like, just giant-sized humanoid type people from the past with all different kinds of shaped skulls, including, what we would consider just giant versions of us. But these may be the hybrids, and, the giants themselves, and I often say this, and these are the things that you're only going to hear on my channel, is that it's probably due to the mating of normal size, average size human beings with the female of the giant species, and not the other way around, the male to female. So all these stories about the rape of women and Nephilim giants and all that kind of stuff, having intercourse with normal-sized women. I don't think that would be the case, besides the fact that the cells might not even be able to cope with the size, different in size, but it may be more successful the other way around, from a giant female to a normal sized female. This is all I'm suggesting, okay? So, look, I'm not a biological science, I'm not a scientist in biology or anything like that or whatever. I've done a hell of a lot of reading on all different kinds of subjects, college graduate, a dean's list, honors list, all that kind of stuff. So I have a good understanding of these things, and I think that's probably the way that it took place. And as far as these people and what they ate, they probably ate a lot of stuff that came out of the ocean, which the meat has a different consistency than red meat. Red meat has the tendency to get caught between the teeth, causing, all kinds of decay, etc. So, look, these are the stories over and over again, but we're going to talk about these accounts from Britain. Chris Leslie on his website, Greatest Ancestors, has quite a few things. He's taken some things out of, like, Fritz Zimmerman's book. Thanks, honey. Thanks, Mallory. Are you leaving, or just give me a cookie? You're giving me the vanilla part of the black and white cookie. Because you know I love it. You're so sweet. Thanks, honey. My buddy, Mallory, you're giving me the good stuff. She likes the chocolate part. I like the white part of the black and white cookie. Don't ask me why. I like chocolate, but I don't like the chocolate part of the black and white cookie. I don't know why. Anyway, so let's keep talking about this here, and we'll get to the accounts of the so-called giants here in Britain. And this first one is on this what they call an Irish petrified giant, but because the article is from a British news source, they talk about it, and this is a picture you've seen a million times, etc., etc. But here's an article about it right here, and it is often strange and leads me to believe, I don't know, there's something else going on beyond this. I don't know, something in the background in the Matrix or something, because it's just too many strange things going on here for my taste. I have a very strange feeling about it. Petrified giant. Railway company's queer storage to storage of Irish giant, 200 pounds, is an item which appears in the books of the L&NW Railway at the Worship Street Goods Depot. The story is a peculiar one in and how. Nearly 32 years ago, a coffin-like receptacle of stone arrived at the Broad Street Goods Depot, consigned from Manchester. It contained the mortal remains of a petrified Irish giant weighing close upon 3 tons, and it took a dozen men and a 10-ton crane to shift it. This gigantic skeleton is 12 foot 2 inches in height, has a chest girth of 6.5 feet, 1 foot has 6 toes, and the length of the arm is 4.5 feet. It was accidentally dug up many years ago in County Antrim by a Mr. Dyer, who made a considerable amount of money by exhibiting it in Manchester and Liverpool. A showman named Kershaw afterwards obtained a partnership in the exhibition, but owing to some disagreement, the quote-unquote giant was sent to London without his knowledge. While it was still on the railway company's premises, Kershaw brought an action in the Chancery and obtained an injunction to prevent the company delivering it until the ownership was satisfactorily settled. Nothing further was heard, and the coffin with its grim contents was moved to the Worship Street Goods Depot, where it still remains. And the company have opened a fictitious account in which they pay, theoretically, several shillings a week for storage. This is the Cardiff Times, 22nd of August, 1908. And you know about the Cardiff giant, the story I've gone over on the channel, and how it's just a complete baloney story from start to finish, and ushered in this whole sort of psychological operation against the existence of the giants, okay? It's just a baloney story overall. And in C.W. Sharam's book, The First American, he goes over that in there, and we talk about that. If you haven't seen that video on my channel, it's a pretty important video, so you should check it out. But in any case, very weird with the Cardiff Times, kind of just, But we've seen pictures of this thing. Let's suppose that it is real. And again, another petrified giant. How does petrification take place? Well, maybe a lot different than we think. This one has many, many details here. But again, I say, even if they do dig up something that resembles sort of a statue, and they claim it's a hoax or whatever, what's to say this isn't a statue from some culture in the past that was even before, the quote-unquote giants? Who knows? I'm just saying. Let's say they're all statues that they're digging up and they claim they're petrified, man, because there are no other civilizations that existed in the past before ours. Isn't that correct? Okay, well, that's a stupid assumption that anybody could make, considering the age of this planet. They have it nice and neatly wrapped up with with a bow and everything for us at Christmas time to accept this history, but it isn't quite the history that we know it is from going over all these things. And they just don't want to tell us about it because they're either anti-religion, pro-Darwinianism, whatever it is. These are the antiquated ideas that don't fit the research of our present time. And, there's probably a lot of people who know it, but unfortunately, Alois Herdlichka was a guy who more or less, set the deal in stone, pardon the pun, that these giants should be taken, very lightly. And, we can make up all kinds of excuses as to why they don't exist. Slightly more robust or whatever cockamamie euphemism they want to make up for these people who are obviously larger and bigger and perhaps even smarter. Large-sized and well-formed skulls from England. There are two types of skulls mentioned: long and broad skulls. The broad skulls may be the Neanderthal type. Maybe. This is pure conjecture by whomever. The Neanderthal type may be the gene from red hair. Yeah, maybe. And who's to say, you have this odd hair color here. Well, why not odd skin color from the past? Where did the Native Americans get their skin color? A red pigmented skin color or any sort of different kind of skin color, tawny or otherwise. Okay? Are we sure of all the pigmentation? We know ours right now, the three races of human beings and all this kind of stuff. But perhaps there were more in the past, okay, that we don't know about, with other kinds of skin colors, maybe even blue for all we know. Look, this is how it is in the animal world and, insect world. So why not? Okay, to close those possibilities off are just stupid. Research leader Dr. Rosalind Harding said it is certainly possible that red hair comes from Neanderthals. Neanderthals are generally thought to have been a less intelligent species than modern man, Homo sapiens. They were taller and stockier, but with shorter limbs, bigger faces and noses, receding chins, and low foreheads. Well, current research seems to suggest that the Neanderthals are just as intelligent as us. They've got that wrong, okay? Look, people, you think the field of archaeology and anthropology are like thousands of years old and they got it refined down to a perfect science. Well, they don't. These things are brand new sciences. Most things with an ology on the end are just recent sciences in the whole scheme of things in the history of human beings and all kind of stuff. They reflect like 1 second from the timeline, okay? We just barely got a handle on this stuff, even with all our technological equipment and everything. DNA, mentioning DNA study, another thing, they don't have 100 completely down. They look at these things and there's mystery genes in there and all this kind of stuff. They can't figure a lot of stuff out. Everybody's genes are all screwed up, including the giants were probably all screwed up too. Probably combinations of all kinds of hominids that lived in the past. The DNA study has concluded that some Neanderthals also had red hair, although the mutation responsible for this differs from that which causes red hair in modern humans. Isn't that interesting? Most humans carry some Neanderthal genes, that is, most non-Africans do. These broad skull people are associated with Neanderthals with red heads of a different line, and possibly a portion are descended from Cain. Yeah, okay, maybe. A term to describe the broad skull and large brow is brachiocephalic. So they're saying brachiocephalic here. We just went over this in a previous video about how the Bell Beaker people were brachiocephalic, and so with the Adena culture, these bigger brachiocephalic giants from the past in the Americas. Okay, so they're conferring it here, brachiocephalic. Okay, so that's like the Adena with these vaulted craniums, and that is certainly an unusual skull type. The long skulls were connected to the Egyptian pharaohs line, so they're talking about the dolichocephalic type. So there's two types, the brachiocephalic type and the dolichocephalic type, each one occurring naturally because the story of the past is filled with all different kinds of humanoids and of various sizes, shapes, and all kinds of things, and possibly suggests even genetic engineering at some time in the distant past where more advanced civilizations were here on this planet. There's no reason not to think so, okay? They have all the, they want, again, they want to make a nice, neat package of the past so they can teach it well, and they don't want to leave any loose ends or anything, so they close them all up. You just make a bunch of stuff up, just like we could if we studied it, okay? We are studying it, so, look, we can use our imagination just as good as anybody else, but we're going to do it a little bit more intelligently by, discussing these things without any sort of preconceived notions about it. Very strong men from England. It seems that there are recognizable traits and features that distinguishes tribes of giants, and this is what I'm getting at on my channel when we look at the giants in the Americas. What is referred as the Neanderthal skull, which has a larger brain capacity than humans today. They have thick brows, a low sweeping forehead, and the back part of the skull enlarged greatly. Another is the cone-headed type, like the skulls from Peru. These types have been found all over the world and have been mimicked by banding of the skull. Some of the elongated skulls are not the result of banding. Oh, and back to this, I forgot to mention to it about Hugh Newman. If you want to watch something about the origins of the giants of Albion and Gog Magog and all that kind of stuff, Hugh Newman does an excellent lecture here on Megalithomania UK and tells you the whole story, the whole convoluted mythology behind the whole thing. Okay, they're reckoning, yes, with possible facts from the past. Okay, but again, these people, just like the Native American peoples, did not know these people. Okay, and there was maybe some surviving giants, whatever, and they killed them all. Okay, because they're afraid of them. And all sorts of stories made up by the people of the past, like them being cannibals, whatever. Okay, they're wearing cloth, they're taking care of their kids and everything, and they're eating other people's babies and whatnot. I highly doubt it. Really do. Another is the content. Okay, these types have been found all over the world and been mimicked by banding of the skull. Some of the elongated skulls are not the result of banding. The individuals known as the long-headed men may be from the Egyptian culture of the pharaohs known to have long skulls. These may be the Beaker culture or what is known as the men of the battle axe. Okay, another name for the Beaker culture, people who brought metallurgy with them. Okay, some of these things are neglected, mentioned. Not mentioned at all in the article, let's say Wikipedia or whatever, including the type of mound. So, look, the pottery and the physiology of these people are not the only thing that these people shared. They also shared the type of mounds that they built, bell barrel mounds and bowl barrel mounds, which, Jason Jarrell and Farrell Farmer did a lot of research, and they found the identical kinds of mounds here in the Americas, okay? I go over it on my channel, folks. If you're into the giants or whatever, I cover a lot of stuff on the giants. The broad-headed men may be the Neanderthal type, having large foreheads and associated with Britain. It is said that this culture possessed large, robust skeletons, are known for their large brow ridges, from which the origin of these people might be traced back to the Polish origins of the Galicia. Okay, so look, again, where did J.R.R. Tolkien draw all his mythology from for The Hobbit and the trilogy and all of the Silmarillion, whatever, which are all books that I read, by the way, when I was very young. I read them twice, as a matter of fact. I was 12, when I was 14, I read all those books. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that Tolkien drew from the past and everything. Okay, this is just more than these. Every time they thought it was just us, and then it was the Neanderthals, now it's the Denisovans, and the little tiny people of Indonesia, and the Belbeaker people, and come on, folks, look, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of hominids and humanoids in the past, more like J.R. Tolkien, okay? These people, the mainstream academics, can hardly believe it when they're talking about it, whatever, and especially in this country, have been systematically trying to undermine it by saying all kinds of things like acromegaly and gigantism and every excuse in the book to avoid this history that they don't want to talk about. The intermingling and breeding practices make it hard to trace specific tribes, but I guess skull shapes might be the best way with historical verification backing up the claims. Politics, it seems to always be at war with history, and the losers and minorities have their histories rewritten. The problem is no kingdom lasts, so with each successive loss, previous history always seems to be rewritten. Now that is so true. The races and culture of the world suffer from selective memory. It seems that the living does not have the answers, and the only truth is silently spoken from honest anthropological and paleontological pursuits. The Way of the Sea, 1929, Fritz Zimmerman. It's again, Fritz Zimmerman was one of these old school researchers into the giants, into the Nephilim story, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and the Nephilim story just may be an allegory for something else. We know by the cargo cult people that primitive peoples can exist on the same world along with more, very advanced civilizations simultaneously, one not having any knowledge of the other. Okay, and these things happen in the past, and it has nothing to do with aliens, angels, or any other fantastic things at all. It's all homegrown, and this is the story that we need to understand, folks. Those other things are rabbit holes you go down, and all the understanding of this past that we don't know anything about, the ages of the giants, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of years of stories to be told about it. Okay, we don't know anything about it. We're not going to simplify it by just saying it's Nephilim or Anunnaki or whatever it is. First of all, these UFO things are not craft, not spaceships. They live in the space. Biomechanoids. 7-foot skeleton near Stonehenge. A farm plow strikes something, and 6 large flagstones are removed in what appears to be a cistern, and a 7-foot skeleton is uncovered. The skeletons were uncovered near a barn where the Humbleton burn house. Where was the Humbleton burn house? A funerary urn was found there as well, which did not receive much attention. 7-foot skeletons are very common in the past. There is an almost unspoken belief that mankind is getting taller, but we need to take a harder look at the averages and how many 7-foot individuals are prevalent today. 5'8" is the average height. In the not so distant past, it was 7 feet. So I've gone over this in detail on my channel about the history of growth and height in human beings, okay? And, what Chris Leslie here is saying in a way is very true, except that, the research has shown that we've stopped growing for some reason, and they're confounded by that. And whenever large people are found in the past, they have to be able to explain it, and they can't. It's inexplicable to them why people would be anywhere that height of like 7 foot or even 6'6". There's no reason for it. Everybody should just be of this average height like it is today. Okay, 5'8" is the average height in the world, guys. Okay, it's not 7 foot, it's not 6'6", it's not even 6 foot. All right, so think about that. 7-foot skeleton in Westmoreland, England. The skeleton of a 7-foot male skeleton was recovered, while 2 female skeletons were uncovered from a Kistavin in Sunbegun. Funerary urns were found at Hart Rig that were 2 feet in length and 1 foot in diameter, which contained the burnt remains of a female. Many mounds and giant gravestones can still be seen. All of this testifies that the large megalithic stones scattered across England are grave markers for giants. Maybe. Or most of them, or all of them, who knows? On many sites like the one near Rothy Bridge, there are giant holes where a large megalithic stone circle once stood. Now it has been plundered and its mysteries lost, which is like many places on this planet where these sites were plundered for their stone and everything, and we don't even know where some of them are because that was done. A bridge was in need of repair and the stones were removed. At another location, Rossat, are large stone mounds built over graves, much like the mounds in America. Okay, so somebody's saying built over graves, much like the mounds in America, and vice versa. Okay, like these bell barrows and bowl barrow mounds, which can be found in Europe and in the Americas. And it's just funny when they talk about the Bell Beaker people, they don't mention anything about mound building, anything like that. Okay. On many sites, like the one near Rothy Bridge, there are giant holes where okay, we went through that. And I tell you, a lot of the stone walls of New England have been plundered for landfill, road fill, whatever it is, or to rebuild other walls, whatever. So this has been going on. We've been destroying our own history for centuries now, I guess, because, we're too stupid to understand that, all these things should be left exactly as they were so we can study them and understand something about a past that we've been lied to about. Okay. Bones and knees have been plundered. Some exist that may still have not been opened. 7-foot skeletons are a global phenomenon. People were larger in the past as animals were larger in the past. It was also said that the funerary urns that were found were all well fired, meaning that there was examples of technology, ingenuity, and knowledge. This covers all of greater ancestry and paints a different historical picture than what is currently politicized, which is so true. And if you're going to find anything out about it, it's about here on Greater Ancestors with Chris Leslie and on my channel, certainly. And we're not going to the Anunnaki and Nephilim, not just yet. We've got to get through all this other stuff before we can ever determine that. And maybe we'll never be able to determine that, but we'll be able to determine a lot of other things. Much larger bones in Cornwall County, England. This report has no specifics or measurements, but it is a testament to the language of greater ancestry. It states that bones disarticulated and scattered that were much larger than those weaker descendants of today. Funerary urns were also found that were full of black earth. The bones were found in Cornwall County, close to the Land's End and in the village of Men. 7 by 6 feet capstones were used as a burial covering. The bones were in a stone cavity found by a farmer in 1716. Again, from Fritz Zimmerman and the research that he did. Old school researcher into the giants. Sheringham, Norfolk, giant hand axe. That a race of giants roamed the earth ages ago in the early Pleistocene era seems to be indicated by the discovery of a huge stone axe at Norfolk, England, which apparently was wielded by prehistoric man. As the great axe was found in the strata that underlies glacial deposits, scientists are sure it was produced and used by a race that antedated the Ice Age or whatever occurred and not the Ice Age. That's a baloney story. Okay, so a giant hand axe from Sheringham, Norfolk, an altogether remarkable gigantic hand axe discovered embedded in the beach below Beeston Hill, Sheringham, by Mr. P.T. Burchell, has been figured and described by Mr. J. Reed Moore. The implement measured in its greatest length 15 inches, in greatest width 6 inches, and greatest thickness 5 inches. Its weight is approximately 14 pounds. That's huge. It's derived originally from the base of a chromophorus bed, which rests upon the surface of the chalk. The implementoriferous bed runs in beneath the forest bed strata and the glacial deposits which form the cliff, some 200 feet in height. The material of the axe is of flint, the color of the flake surfaces being jet black. The ridges and outstanding parts are abraded and it is striated in places. There is a small area of the cortex remaining which shows a ferruginous staining. It is a specimen of the platiform type, that is rhomboidal in section in the anterior portion and showing the remains of both the dorsal and ventral planes or platforms. Take care, Valerie. I'll see you tomorrow, right? All right, kid. While the second is equally clearly of the battiform type, in which the section through the anterior portion is triangular in section, the lower angles of the triangle representing the cutting edges. Hand axes showing these characteristics have been discovered not only in England, but also widely distributed over the Earth's surface. The numerous specimens discovered in the basement bed belonging to the early Pleistocene epoch are as highly specialized as are those of any later prehistoric period and represent a very definite and necessary stage in implemental development. No adequate explanation of the purpose which the gigantic size of the Sheringham axe could serve has been offered. So they're all found all over the earth because these giant humanoids were all over the earth. And, were they survivors of some cataclysm and then devolved somewhat? That's what I think. And these are kind of theories that you're going to hear on my channel, the kind of hypothesis you're going to hear on my channel of, gravity being different in the past that will allow for bigger animals, bigger cells to form, as we know from real research, mainstream research in gravitational biology, which I've covered on this channel as well. I cover all the, you know, um, concomitant type research that would cover these things about the giants, etc. Okay, this is what you're going to hear on my channel. Do you hear that on anybody else's channel? No, they're just, whatever story they're giving about the giants. And you're, asked to accept it on faith. They're trying to get to the bottom of these things by showing some hard evidence, at least through these accounts and other things of related sciences. Kent, England, giant hand axe, an important archaeological dig undertaken by the University of Southampton, has produced over 20 flint hand axes, including 2 of exceptional size and quality, which may lead to a reassessment of the level of human development in the early Stone Age. The dig at the site of Cuxton in Kent uncovered a sharply pointed 307mm hand axe, the second largest found in Britain, preserved in almost mint condition. The hand axe displays exquisite, almost flamboyant workmanship in addition to its extreme size. Another giant hand axe was also uncovered beside it, this time a cleaver, 179mm long by 134mm wide. Dr. Francis Wendman Smith, who led the dig, said that the find is significant because the presence of such clearly defined types of hand axe reflects deliberate design, something not previously associated with the lower Paleolithic period, which lasted from 600,000 to 250,000 BC in Britain. Okay, and they give you all these different time periods, different places in the world, because they're not sure, and all these time periods can be off so drastically, it's pathetic. The sharp point, straight edges, and symmetrical waist would not arrive except by design, indicating the ability to hold in the mind the idea of the intended shape, and suggesting that humans at that time were already capable of language. Okay, already capable of language some 250,000 years ago. Okay, so look, guys, you can, hear it from all different kinds of experts and all this kind of stuff, all right? They're not sure about what happened in the past. They still aren't sure about a lot of things about the past, so don't let them fool you. Don't let them kid you, okay? They're not sure about a lot of things, and just keep that in mind. Preliminary indications are that at 250,000 BC, this is one of the youngest hand axe sites in Europe. Changes in types of hand axe throughout the previous 400,000 years lead us to believe that the lower Paleolithic is perhaps not the period of stasis that is often suggested, but incorporates a trajectory of cultural, cognitive, and behavioral development that has continued into and through later stages of the Paleolithic. After 250,000 BC, Britain becomes inhabited by people making different types of stone tools, special Levalloisan flakes produced from a distinctive core. Perhaps we are witnessing the last stand of the Acheuleans, early humans who relied upon hand axes to survive, but who were replaced by people with different and perhaps more successful tools. Alternatively, perhaps the Acheuleans just changed their tool-making habits, and there was no change in population. These early humans went on hunting excursions in bands of up to a dozen, equipping themselves in advance with the hand axes they thought they would need, and returning to their lairs laden with joints of meat. The hand axes themselves would have been used to butcher the meat from animal carcasses, and they also probably functioned as symbols of communication and served to diffuse tension without actual confrontation. Yes, among human beings, all that stuff, perhaps, but showing these large blades and everything certainly suggests these giants who had these perfect teeth, and it seems very unlikely that they would be eating red meat with those perfect teeth, okay, unless they had, Johnson & Johnson toothbrushes or whatever laying around or whatever. I don't think so. All right. It seems to me, just like the Sumerians, the fishmen that came out of the sea and everything, everybody was eating a lot of seafood because that's real brain food and it's real healthy for you. And all this red meat and the muscle tissue especially is not particularly healthy for you. And as a matter of fact, if you're going to eat red meat, you got to eat all the organs because they contain vitamins and minerals that are different than the muscle meat. Okay, muscle meat has the least amount of nutrition. It's all those organs and everything that have all the vitamins and nutrients in them that we're not eating and getting very unhealthy because of it. I'm going to go over that. I'm going to do a video on my channel about that. I mean, I love animals. I'm a big animal rights guy and all this kind of stuff, but we got to talk about eating meat. I think we were designed to eat meat for a reason. An important archaeological dig undertaken by the University of Southampton has produced over 20 flint hand axes, including two of. Okay, did I read this already? Did I go over this already? Yeah, I did. I don't know. Maybe it's just a different article of the same thing. Giants of antiquity found in Old Gaul. Race of giants in Old Gaul. In the year 1890, some human bones of enormous size, double the ordinary, in fact, were found in the tumulus of Castelnau, Harald, and have since been carefully examined by Professor Krieger, who, while admitting that the bones are those of a very tall race, nevertheless finds them abnormal in dimensions and apparently of morbid growth. They undoubtedly reopen the question of the quote-unquote giants of antiquity, but do not furnish sufficient evidence to decide it. So this is 1892, and there's all this debates going on in those Victorian times about giants because of the Cardiff giant and everything. And, of course, they're going to, those on one side or favor one side are going to have these biases and everything. Although we heard by other experts looking at these bones and everything that said that they were bigger, more muscular, etc., not suffering from any sort of diseases or whatever it is, okay? So you had these debates going on because of the Cardiff Giant, which I know was the, PSYOP mind control operation put out back then, when they were just altering history and doing whatever. Northumberland, England giants. The banks of the Core being worn away by some impetuous land floods, there was discovered about the year 1660 a skeleton conjectured to be that of a man of very extraordinary and prodigious size. The length of the thigh bone was nearly 6 feet, and the skull, teeth, and other parts proportionally monstrous. So of the thigh bone was nearly 6 feet, and the skull. So that the length of the whole body was computed at 21 feet. Some parts of it were in possession of the Earl of Derwentwater in 1695. A singularly large bone found here was hung up in the kitchen of the Old George Inn in the Flesh Market, Newcastle, for many years. This bone was purchased by the proprietor of the Keswick Museum, where it is shown as a rib of a giant, Core, found at Corbridge. History has given examples of gigantic human remains progressively decreasing from 30 feet to 10 feet in height, being for the earth would seem unsuitable to tread upon. But there is no evidence that mankind has degenerated in size, and living giants have seldom exceeded 7 feet in height. As the aberrations of nature tend to excess, there is generally a proportional deficiency in symmetry, strength, and energy, which, again, you see all these excuses to be given because, this is an old way of thinking, not based on the whole pile of evidence given for these things. All right, so this is where is this taken from? Something or rather. Bedfordshire, England, 6'6" with a massive head. Perfect skeletons of the Stonehenge, prehistoric human remains of a man woman of priceless value found in Bedfordshire. A remarkable discovery of the skeletons of a man and woman belonging to the Stone Age, which antiquarians consider of priceless value, has just been made at Aswick in Bedfordshire. Some workmen were laying a conduit near the line of the bed of the river Ivel when they came across the skeletons. They were examined by Dr. Waddell, a well-known antiquary, who at once gave it as his opinion that they belonged to the Neolithic period and were of great importance to the world of science. The male is believed to have been a chieftain, and he must have been a man of magnificent physique, as the skeleton measures 6 feet 6 inches, while the head is massive. The woman was laid at right angles to the man, and with her feet resting against the side of his body. Apparently, when her lord died, she had been slain and buried with him, according to the prehistoric custom. Both skeletons are complete and in good state of preservation due to the nature of the soil. Their ultimate resting place will be, in all probability, the British Museum. And I would imagine they did that, but, can we see him today? Do we know anything about him? This is from 1910, the Desert Evening News. Okay, 20th century here. And this burial that they found here sounds awfully like a lot of the burials we heard about in the Americas, how these giant figures were buried. Castle Garth, giant jaw and foot. Castle Garth, giant jaw and foot, Thirsk Saxon giant. The foot and parts of the skull were recovered during excavations of a Saxon burial ground at Castle Garth near the museum. Measurements of the leg bone show that the person stood nearly 7 feet tall. Thirsk Saxon giant can be seen in the Reynolds room on the first floor of the museum. Okay, that's very interesting. Again, there has to be explanations for it. You just can't say that there are giants in the past and they have acromegaly or whatever it is. Whole races of people with acromegaly and gigantism is hard to believe. And they have to give those reasons for it because they can't explain it. It's inexplicable, according to their theories on height and growth. Their theories on height and growth. They don't match their theories, you see. See, archaeological and anthropological science, folks, is just like NASA science. They're often dumbfounded, mystified, bewildered. These are the terms that they use when they find these things and everything. And then they have to make up some cockamamie story. They have to make the square peg fit the round hole, so they just whittle off the sides and sort of jam it in there to make it fit. Okay, their preconceived notions of the past, which they would insist upon while they were in school, that they believe and they were indoctrinated with and brainwashed with in their test-taking factories there, modeled on the Prussian system of soldier robot making, according to John Taylor Gatto. But there's obviously evidence of this and they can't explain it, so they just, make all kinds of excuses and rationalizations. So otherwise, their diplomas there aren't worth anything and, basically junk. In excess of 10 feet, Cumberland. The giant skull, from the measurements of the giant skull at the Museum of Keswick, Cumberland County, England, the stature of the giant must have been in excess of 10 feet, or about the height of the Philistine Goliath. Tuesday, a U.S. port of entry not on the sea. Okay, so I guess these are accounts in the U.S. press about these things, not only the British press. Found Hope, 8'6" giant. The Daily Bulletin, Friday, September 29th, 1882. An interesting discovery has been made at Found Hope near Hereford. Mr. Stone, builder, has been engaged for some time in the restoration of St. Mary's Church there. On Thursday morning, whilst his men were excavating beneath the church, they came upon a brick vault with an arched roof, and in this vault was found a handsome oak coffin of extraordinary length and breadth. The coffin crumbled to pieces when touched, disclosing a human skeleton of gigantic proportions, which, when the air struck it, dissolved into dust. The length of the body from head to feet was nearly 8'6", and the breadth 3 feet 6 inches. Okay, so here we see the same thing occurring that happened in the Americas. They dug up these skeletons. The minute the air touched the skeletons, it disintegrated into dust, crumbled into dust. Okay, and this is why there is not a lot of evidence of giant skeletons from the past. Otherwise, we'd have a mountain of them. Okay, they all disintegrated into dust when exposed to the air. And what is this, stone brick built, tomb here for this rather large guy in a wooden coffin or whatever? You're talking about a history and a whole people, a different past. Okay, these are so similar to the ones in America. Okay, hence the whole Adina and Bell Beaker relationship there. Okay, you're gonna have to think of the Earth in different terms. Okay, the sea levels were as such, according to mainstream, some 7,000 years ago, 5,000 BC, 6,000 BC. The sea levels were dropped some, so many feet. And then, going back in time even further and further and further, well, there would be land bridges to all the continents everywhere. Okay, at least it wouldn't be so far to travel by boat either. And now that they believe that the people didn't cross the Bering Strait and they all came by boat, well, anybody could have been traveling by boat in the ancient times, in the prehistoric times, anywhere on the planet, if that's the case. According to them. Now they changed their minds, right? Because everywhere they dug, they couldn't find evidence of the Bering Strait, of the Bering land bridge crossing. According to them, not alternative researchers or me or anybody, according to them. Okay, so therefore they all came by boat. which means anybody with a boat could go anywhere, anytime in the past, period. Okay, everybody visited the Americas again, and there was millions of people here, and nobody made colonies here. They might have set up garrisons for trading purposes. That's about it. Okay, get it through your head what the past really was about. Holbeach, 7 foot 2 inch giant skeleton, and ancient giant. The complete skeleton of a human giant has been found at Holbeach, England, a little Lincolnshire fen town between Lynn and Spalding. During excavations for the foundations of 2 new houses, every bone was in perfect condition and not a tooth was missing. The skeleton measured 7 feet 2 inches in length. A curious key, 5 inches long with a triangular handle, was found near the bones. Stuckley, the famous antiquary who was born at the spot where the discovery has just been made, records a Roman Catholic chapel dedicated to St. Peter formerly stood. Other human remains have been previously unearthed on the same spot. Okay, so often these burial grounds, especially mounds and everything, were used again and again, secondary burials, etc., are found in these things, okay? And the mistakes that they made relating the skeletons to the same people or even understanding the burials or anything like that was all, not, still to this day, is not fully understood or cataloged or collated by anybody. Because giants didn't exist in the past. They all suffer from acromegaly. They're all sickly, swinging around 14-pound axes. They're all sickly with acromegaly and gigantism. Yeah, okay. One thing doesn't match the other. It doesn't matter. Just believe what they say. That's all. Cumberland County in excess of 10 feet. The giant skull, from the measurements of the giant skull of the Museum of Keswick, Cumberland, which again, they're going about, it must have been about 10 feet. So a 10-foot guy, that's a pretty big guy. And if you're 10 feet tall and with musculature and in the right gravity or whatever, you could just build megalithic constructions all day long, okay, every day, and make them out of this really big and hard stone. Gravity is different, your strength is different, tools are different, everything is different that you can't imagine because you're not 10 feet tall and living in a different gravity. You see? So, in any case, that's the end of these things. We ended up back with Queen Elizabeth looking at the skeleton here. Look at the look on her face. She's like, oh my, this is large brute. Yeah. So, look, come on, folks. You get the Queen looking at these giant people. It doesn't look to me like they're suffering or anything like that. Look at the size of these guys. Look at their skull, the spine bones there and everything. These guys look like pretty durable guys. Okay, 6 fingers and 6 toes, a lot of them, and everything, horns and all sorts of other things coming out of their heads and whatnot, as we know from the Americas, and they're all over the planet, okay, including here in Britain. And the giants of Albion might just not be such a myth as it is a fact. Okay, and the story of Britain and the conquering of Britain was the story of the genocide of all these giants. Just another place in the world where the genocide of the giants and all this cannibalism nonsense, demonization of the enemy had to be done just like it is in every society, including our own, when we face enemies, okay, propaganda and nonsense to make these people seem more evil and wicked than they actually are, okay? And, if they aren't at all, it doesn't matter. We're going to make them out to be that way. Okay, it makes it easy for our people to kill them. We got to make it easy for to kill them because if you think about it, whatever, you might want to be friends with them, like the Germans and the Americans during World War I, singing Christmas carols together. Okay, so look, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, like again, if I say you want to look at some other stuff that gets into it deep, you can look at this thing. I'll leave a link to it at the end of this video here for Hugh Newman. The origins of the giants in Britain. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that. Please do hit the like button, and if you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. We get into a lot of different ideas about the giants, things that you never ever heard and never gonna. This is the channel where you're gonna hear it on. I hate to disappoint all the History Channel acolytes and aficionados, but you're not gonna get the truth there, folks. That's where you get all the lies and the rabbit holes. All right, guys. Anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.